The woman from the bank spoke so gently that it took me a second to understand what she was saying. "Mrs. Judith Clark, we're calling about the overdue payments on your personal loan." I laughed. "I think you have the wrong person." Then she quietly replied, "The loan was opened under your name with your social security number, and every page carries your signature." My heart stopped, because only one person in the world had access to everything they described: my son. Before I called the police, I decided he was going to explain every single lie to the bank to my face and to himself. If you've ever loved someone enough to protect them even when they didn't deserve it, I hope you'll stay with me until the end. And if this story speaks to you, please like and subscribe. I'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if your own child had betrayed your trust? And before we begin, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. People often assume betrayal arrives with warning signs. It doesn't. Most of the time, it walks through your front door, wearing the face you've loved your entire life. Before I tell you how my son managed to steal my identity, you need to understand the woman I was before that phone call from the bank. Because if you don't understand that, you'll never understand why what happened hurt so much. My name is Judith Clark. I'm 64 years old, and until 2 years ago, I spent nearly 4 decades working as an elementary school librarian in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. Children were my whole world. I watched nervous kindergartners become confident young adults. I remembered birthdays, favorite books, and which children needed a little extra kindness after difficult weekends at home. People used to joke that I had endless patience. Maybe they were right, or maybe I simply believed that everyone deserved another chance. That belief shaped my career. It also shaped my family. My husband Robert passed away 6 years before all of this happened. Cancer. It arrived quietly and stole him piece by piece. By the end, I wasn't just losing my husband. I was losing the person who always balanced me. Robert had a way of seeing through people, especially our son. Whenever Michael came asking for money, Robert would fold his arms and say, "Helping isn't always the same as fixing." I hated hearing that. "He just needs a little support," I'd argue. Robert would sigh. "No, Judy, he needs consequences." I thought Robert was being too hard. Looking back now, I realize he was simply seeing what I refused to see. After Robert died, the house became painfully quiet. Too quiet. I found myself leaving the television on just to hear another voice. Every Sunday, I'd still cook enough food for 4 people before remembering there were only 2 of us now. Me, and whatever memories still lived inside those walls. Michael visited more often after his father died. At first, I thought it was because he was worried about me. Maybe part of him was. He'd stop by with coffee. He'd mow my lawn. He'd fix a leaky faucet or replace a smoke detector. Those little visits meant everything to me. I thought we were growing closer. Now I wonder if he was simply learning where I kept everything. Michael had always been charming. He inherited Robert's smile and my habit of making conversation with strangers. People liked him immediately. Employers liked him. Neighbors liked him. Even when life wasn't going well, he somehow convinced everyone that success was just around the corner, including me, especially me. The first time he asked for money, it seemed reasonable. His car transmission had failed. "I'll pay you back in 3 months," he promised. I wrote the check without hesitation. 3 months came and went. He never mentioned it again. Neither did I. Then came the credit card debt. He sat across from me at my kitchen table with tears in his eyes. "I made some mistakes, Mom. I just need one clean slate." I believed him, again. Then it was overdue rent after his divorce from Lauren. Then medical bills after an unexpected surgery. Then repairs for another car. Then a small business loan that supposedly needed just a little more cash to survive. Each conversation sounded almost identical. "I'm so close." I've learned my lesson. This is the last time. I swear. Those words became so familiar that I stopped questioning them. I simply reached for my checkbook. The amounts grew larger over the years. $500, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000. I told myself I wasn't giving him money. I was helping my son get back on his feet. I never stopped to ask why he kept falling. My retirement savings weren't endless. Still, I convinced myself family came first. Besides, Michael always looked so ashamed whenever he asked. Or at least, I thought he did. There was one bright light through all those difficult years. My granddaughter, Sophie. She was 11 when everything happened. Smart, funny, kind in a way you can't teach. She loved books almost as much as I did. Every Wednesday after school, she'd come to my house while Lauren finished work. We baked chocolate chip cookies, played card games, read mystery novels together. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch swing for an hour talking about school. She once asked me why grandparents seemed calmer than parents. I laughed. Because we've already made most of our mistakes. If only that had been true. Lauren and Michael had divorced 4 years earlier. It wasn't ugly. It was exhausting. Lauren told me she'd grown tired of broken promises. She never tried turning Sophie against Michael. She simply stopped believing his words. At the time, I secretly thought she wasn't patient enough. Now I know she'd simply reached the place I hadn't. Lauren saw reality long before I did. Whenever Michael missed child support, I quietly helped. Not because Lauren demanded it, because I didn't want Sophie to go without. If Michael couldn't afford new school clothes, I bought them. If he forgot Sophie's birthday present, I'd quietly slip him money beforehand. If his electricity was about to be disconnected, I'd write another check. I told myself I was protecting my granddaughter, but deep down, I was protecting my son from feeling uncomfortable. There's a difference, a huge one. I just didn't understand it yet. Friends occasionally tried warning me. One afternoon, my neighbor Carol watched Michael leave my driveway. "He sure asks a lot from you," she said carefully. I smiled. "He's having a rough time." She nodded politely, but before walking away, she said something that stayed with me ever since. Sometimes love sounds like yes. Sometimes love sounds like no. I remember thinking she couldn't possibly understand. She only had daughters. She wasn't Michael's mother. She didn't know how hard life had been on him. What I didn't realize was that I wasn't helping Michael survive hardship. I was making sure he never had to face it. Every time life handed him consequences, I quietly removed them. Every bill I paid, every debt I erased, every excuse I accepted. I wasn't teaching him responsibility. I was teaching him something far more dangerous, that someone else would always clean up the mess. Even after Robert died, even after I retired, even after my savings account slowly became smaller every year. Michael never demanded money aggressively. That would have been easier to recognize. Instead, he apologized before asking. He hugged me afterward. He kissed my forehead before leaving. He always made me feel like the generous mother. Never the foolish one. When I look back now, I don't think Michael became dishonest overnight. I think it happened one compromise at a time, one excuse at a time, one lie that seemed too small to matter. And every time he crossed another line, I moved mine. I thought I was protecting our relationship. Instead, I was teaching him that my love had no boundaries. The morning after the bank called, I sat alone in my kitchen staring at an old family photograph. Robert stood beside me with one arm around my shoulders. Little Michael, maybe 8 years old, grinned with 2 missing front teeth while holding a fishing pole almost taller than he was. We looked like the perfect family. I traced Michael's smiling face with my finger. Then, I whispered something I'd never admitted out loud before. I should have stopped rescuing you years ago. The hardest truth wasn't that my son had betrayed me. The hardest truth was realizing I had spent years helping create the man who believed he could. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the woman from the bank repeating the same sentence. Every page carries your signature. By sunrise, I had already made 2 cups of coffee, neither of which I finished. At exactly 9 o'clock, I parked outside the First Community Bank branch, where I had kept my accounts for nearly 30 years. It was strange walking through those familiar doors. Usually, people greeted me with smiles. That morning, everyone seemed unusually careful. The receptionist looked at her computer before looking back at me. "Mrs. Clark?" "Yes." "Ms. Olivia Carter is expecting you." She led me down a quiet hallway into a private office. Waiting inside was a woman in her mid-30s wearing a navy blazer and carrying a thick file folder. She stood and offered her hand. "I'm Olivia Carter. Thank you for coming in." Her voice was calm, not cold, not accusing. That somehow made me even more nervous. A few moments later, another man entered. He introduced himself as Richard Bennett, the branch manager. "I know this is difficult," he said as he sat down. "We're going to go through everything together." I nodded, but I wasn't sure I was ready. Olivia opened the folder. Inside were dozens of neatly organized documents. She slid the first page toward me. "This is the loan application." At the very top, my name, Judith Ann Clark, my address, my phone number. Everything was correct. Then I looked lower. There was my signature, or at least something that looked almost exactly like it. I leaned closer. The loop in the J, the long line under the C, the slight tilt to the right. If someone had shown it to me without context, I might have believed I'd signed it myself. My stomach tightened. "I didn't write this," I whispered. "I believe you," Olivia answered. "But I'd like you to keep looking." She handed me another document. Identity verification. There was a photocopy of my Ohio driver's license, not an old one. My current license. The picture. The expiration date. Everything. I stared at it. "How?" My voice disappeared. Richard answered carefully. "The copy submitted to us appears authentic." I couldn't stop looking at it. Someone had physically copied my license, not guessed, not recreated. Copied. Olivia turned another page. These were the income verification documents. My pension statements, my retirement income, my former employer, even the exact amount deposited into my checking account every month. I felt dizzy. Where would someone get these? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she slid another sheet across the table. The security verification. It listed answers to questions only I should know. Mother's maiden name, first pet, street where I grew up, high school mascot. Every answer was correct, perfectly correct. My hands started shaking. Richard quietly pushed a box of tissues toward me. I hadn't realized tears were already running down my face. "I've been with this bank since before either of you worked here," I said. "I've never missed a payment on anything." "I know," Richard replied softly. "That's one reason this loan was approved." His words hit me harder than I expected. My reputation, the reputation I'd spent decades building, had helped someone steal from me. Olivia waited until I composed myself. Then she asked gently, "Mrs. Clark, how many people have access to your personal records?" I answered automatically, "No one." Then I stopped. No one. That wasn't entirely true. I closed my eyes. I pictured the little office in my house. A tall oak filing cabinet beside the window. The top drawer held old photographs. The second drawer contained insurance papers. The bottom drawer, tax returns, Social Security statements, bank records, my passport, birth certificate, everything. I suddenly remembered telling Michael exactly where the key was, years ago. He had been helping me organize paperwork after Robert died. I don't want you struggling if something happens to me, I'd told him. The cabinet key is taped underneath the second shelf. At the time, it had felt practical, responsible. Now it felt reckless. Olivia noticed the expression on my face. What are you thinking? I swallowed. My son knows where I keep every important document. Neither of them spoke. They simply let the silence settle. It somehow confirmed what I was beginning to fear. Olivia carefully turned another page. This document concerns me the most. It was the electronic application history. She pointed to a line. The application was completed online. Then another line. The supporting documents were uploaded from a residential internet connection. I frowned. What does that mean? It means someone scanned or photographed your documents before submitting them. She wasn't accusing Michael. She didn't need to. My own memories were doing that. I remembered a Sunday afternoon about 8 months earlier. Michael had come over unexpectedly. He'd brought lunch. We ate together. Afterward, he insisted on helping around the house. I'll tighten those loose shelves upstairs, he'd said. I smiled. You're always fixing something. I learned from Dad. He disappeared upstairs for nearly 40 minutes. At one point, I even called up. You okay? Yeah, Mom. I'm just looking for the right screws. I hadn't thought anything of it. Why would I? He was my son. Now another memory surfaced. When he came downstairs, he was holding his phone. I remembered teasing him. Working while you're volunteering, he laughed. Just answering emails. What if he hadn't been answering emails? What if he'd been taking pictures? The thought made my skin crawl. Olivia interrupted my thoughts. Mrs. Clark? Yes. There's something else. She handed me the final document. It was the loan agreement itself. I forced myself to read it. $50,000. I stopped breathing. I never asked for $50,000. Richard quietly replied, I know. I looked back at the paper. 50,000, not 5, not 10, 50. How desperate had Michael become, or had he become something worse than desperate? Olivia leaned forward. I want to explain something important. I nodded. Identity theft committed by strangers usually involves stolen data purchased online. She paused. But cases involving family members are different. I looked at her. The person often has unrestricted access to information. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She was preparing me. In situations like these, she continued, victims frequently struggle because they don't want to believe someone they love could do this. My eyes filled again. I raised him. I know. I taught him honesty. I believe you did. So how did we get here? Neither Olivia nor Richard answered, because they couldn't. Only Michael could answer that question. Richard finally spoke. We're not asking you to accuse anyone today. We simply need you to tell us whether you authorized this loan. I answered without hesitation. No. Did you sign these documents? No. Did you give anyone permission to borrow money in your name? No. He nodded and wrote something in his file. Olivia closed the folder. The investigation officially begins today. I stared at the closed folder. It looked so ordinary. Just paper. Just ink. Yet inside it was the proof that someone had stolen not only my identity, but my trust. As I stood to leave, Olivia walked me to the door. Just before I stepped into the hallway, she quietly said, Mrs. Clark, whoever did this knew you very well. I managed a weak smile. That's exactly what scares me. The drive home felt longer than usual. Every traffic light seemed endless. Every familiar street suddenly looked different. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I didn't go inside immediately. I sat in my car, looking at the house Robert and I had shared for nearly 40 years. Somewhere inside those walls, someone had gathered every piece of information needed to become me. And I was beginning to realize they hadn't needed to break into my house. I had opened the door for them myself. I stood in my living room for almost 5 minutes before I could bring myself to walk upstairs. My office suddenly felt like a crime scene. Nothing looked out of place. The curtains were exactly where I'd left them. The framed photographs still covered the bookshelf. Robert's old reading chair sat beside the window untouched since the day he died. Everything looked normal. But I knew something inside that room had changed forever. I walked to the oak filing cabinet and rested my hand on the top drawer. It was the same cabinet Robert had bought for me nearly 20 years earlier. "Solid oak," he'd proudly said while assembling it. "This thing will outlive both of us." I wished he hadn't been right. I reached underneath the second shelf. The spare key was still taped exactly where I'd hidden it. For just a second, I felt relieved. Then I realized something. If the key had been returned, whoever used it had wanted me to believe no one had ever touched the cabinet. My stomach tightened. I unlocked the bottom drawer. At first glance, everything looked perfectly organized. Each folder still had its handwritten label. Taxes, insurance, medical, retirement, property. I slowly removed every folder, placing them neatly on my desk. Then I started checking each one. The first few seemed complete. Then I opened my tax records. My breathing slowed. Something wasn't right. The folder felt thinner than it should have. I counted. Last year's return was there. The year before was missing. The supporting documents were gone too. I searched again. Nothing. Maybe I'd filed them somewhere else. I checked every drawer, every shelf. Nothing. I moved to the Social Security folder. Several benefit statements had disappeared. The pension folder was next. 2 annual income summaries were missing. Finally, I opened the folder labeled Personal Identification. My passport was there, my birth certificate, but the envelope where I kept photocopies of my driver's license was empty. I sat down hard in Robert's chair. This wasn't random. Someone hadn't taken everything. They'd taken only the documents needed to convince a bank I was borrowing money. Who would know exactly which papers mattered, Michael? The answer came so quickly I almost refused to believe it. "No," I whispered to myself. "There has to be another explanation." I searched the room one more time. I checked boxes in the closet, old storage bins, desk drawers. Nothing. Those papers were gone. Someone had removed them carefully. Whoever it was had known exactly where to look. I leaned back and closed my eyes. Then another memory surfaced. About 9 months earlier, Michael had called me on a Saturday morning. "Mom, are you home?" "I am." "I've got a couple of hours free. Thought I'd finally fix those shelves in your office." I laughed. "I've been asking you to do that for 6 months." "I know. I'm making up for it." He arrived carrying a toolbox. We spent a few minutes talking in the kitchen before he headed upstairs. I stayed downstairs making sandwiches. Every now and then I'd hear drilling, hammering, cabinet doors opening. At the time, it all sounded perfectly normal. Then there had been a long stretch of silence, nearly 20 minutes. I remembered calling upstairs. "You still alive?" He laughed. "Just organizing the screws." Organizing screws. Now that sentence made no sense. Why would organizing screws take 20 minutes unless he hadn't been organizing screws at all? Maybe he'd been opening file folders. Maybe he'd been taking pictures. Maybe he'd been scanning documents with his phone. The memory suddenly made me feel sick. I walked into the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Just 24 hours earlier, I'd been a retired grandmother planning what cookies to bake with Sophie that weekend. Now I was trying to determine whether my own son had stolen my identity. The phone rang. The sound startled me so badly, I nearly dropped the towel. I looked at the screen. Lauren, Michael's ex-wife. She almost never called unexpectedly. Hello? Judith. Her voice sounded hesitant. I hope I'm not bothering you. No. A pause. I've been thinking about calling for weeks. My heart started racing. What happened? I don't really know where to begin. I sat back down. Just tell me. She took a deep breath. Has Michael asked you for money recently? I hesitated. No. Not directly. Another pause. I was afraid of that. What do you mean? Lauren sighed heavily. Judith, things are much worse than he's been telling people. I gripped the phone tighter. How much worse? He lost almost all of his business contracts this year. I frowned. He told me business had slowed down. It didn't slow down. It collapsed. My chest tightened. Lauren continued. He borrowed money from friends. I know of at least 3. He maxed out every credit card. He fell behind on office rent. He even borrowed against equipment he no longer owned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Why didn't anyone tell me? She answered quietly. Because he begged everyone not to. I closed my eyes. What about Ethan, Michael's business partner? Lauren let out a bitter laugh. Ethan made everything worse. How? He kept convincing Michael another investment would save the company. Another loan. Another contract. Another opportunity. There was always one more chance. I remembered Ethan, smooth, confident, always talking about expanding, always arriving in expensive cars. Robert never liked him. That man's always selling dreams, he'd once told me. I thought Robert was judging him unfairly. Now I wondered if Robert had seen something I hadn't. Lauren spoke again. I don't know exactly what's happening now. But collection agencies have been calling. Sometimes 5 or 6 times a day. They even called me looking for him. I sat silently. Then Lauren asked the question I wasn't prepared for. Judith, did Michael do something? My throat tightened. I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect him, even now. Instead, I asked, why would you think that? She answered almost immediately. Because desperate people eventually stop recognizing the lines they shouldn't cross. Neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt painfully honest. Finally, she said softly, I never imagined he'd involve you. Those words broke something inside me. Not because they accused Michael, because they confirmed someone else had already started expecting the worst from him. I had been the last person still believing everything would somehow work out. Before hanging up, Lauren added one more thing. Please don't let him manipulate you. I frowned. I don't think he could. You still believe that? Her voice wasn't cruel, just sad. He always knows exactly what to say. After we ended the call, I sat alone in the quiet house. For the first time in years, I stopped thinking like Michael's mother. I started thinking like someone investigating a stranger. I wrote everything down, the missing documents, the timeline, His visit to repair the shelves, Lauren's phone call, his failing business, the mounting debt, the collection agencies, piece by piece. The puzzle stopped looking like bad luck. It started looking like planning. I looked at the family photograph still sitting on my desk. Robert smiled back at me. I could almost hear his voice. Helping isn't always the same as fixing. This time, I finally understood. And for the first time since the bank called, I stopped asking myself whether Michael could have done this. Instead, I found myself wondering something far more frightening. How long had he been planning it? I didn't call Michael right away. That was the first time in my life I didn't rush to fix something for him. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with the documents I had printed from the bank. I arranged them neatly in front of me. Loan application, signature pages, copies of my driver's license, income statements, $50,000. I kept staring at that number. It didn't look real. Michael had asked me for money many times before, but never like this. Never behind my back. Never using my name. I took a deep breath and picked up my phone. My fingers hovered over his contact. For a moment, I almost put the phone back down. Part of me still hoped there was some explanation I hadn't considered, something I had misunderstood. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I pressed call. He answered on the third ring. "Hey, Mom." His voice sounded normal. Too normal. "Hi, Michael. You okay?" There was something in his tone. Not concern. Careful curiosity. "I need you to come over." A pause. "Now." "Yes." Another pause. "Is everything all right?" I looked at the papers in front of me. No. Silence. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. When the call ended, I sat perfectly still. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just waited. 23 minutes later, I heard his car pull into the driveway. I didn't go to the door. I wanted him to walk into the house the same way he always had. Like nothing was wrong. Like this was just another visit. The door opened. "Mom, I'm in the kitchen." He walked in, smiling slightly. "Hey." Then he saw my face. The smile disappeared. "What's going on?" I didn't answer. I simply slid the stack of papers across the table toward him. "Look at these." He frowned and picked them up. At first, he flipped through casually, then slower, then not at all. His hands stopped moving. The color drained from his face. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he set the papers down carefully. "That's not what it looks like." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was exactly what I expected. "What does it look like, Michael?" He swallowed. "It's complicated." "No," I said quietly. "It's actually very simple." He looked at me. I held his gaze. "Did you take out a loan in my name?" Silence. His eyes dropped to the table. "Michael." "I was going to tell you." When another silence. "I don't know." I leaned back in my chair. "That's not what I asked." He ran a hand through his hair. "Yes," he said finally. I did. The words landed heavier than I expected. Not because I didn't believe it, because hearing him say it made it real. "You forged my signature." "Yes." "You used my social security number." "Yes." "You took documents from my house." He hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." Each answer felt like a small crack in something that had held my life together for years. I folded my hands in front of me. "Why?" He exhaled sharply. "You don't understand how bad things got. Then explain it to me. My business. Don't start there. He looked confused. What? Start with the truth. He stared at me for a long moment. Then his shoulders dropped. I ran out of money. That's not new. I ran out of everything. Credit? Yes. Friends? Yes. Options? He nodded. Yes. And that's when you decided to use my name? He shook his head quickly. No, it wasn't like that. Then what was it like? He hesitated again. I thought I could fix it. With my identity, I was going to pay it back before you ever found out. I let out a slow breath. How I had a deal lined up. With who? He didn't answer. Michael. With Ethan. Of course. I closed my eyes for a moment. What did he tell you? That we just needed one more push, one more investment, one more contract. One more chance, I said. Michael nodded. Yes. I opened my eyes and looked at him. And you believed him. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice. He looked away. You don't understand what it's like to watch everything fall apart. I felt something shift inside me. I watched your father die, I said quietly. Don't tell me I don't understand things falling apart. He went silent. I leaned forward slightly. You had choices, Michael. You chose the one that hurt me. I didn't mean to hurt you. That doesn't make it better. I was desperate, and I was convenient. That hit him. I saw it in his face. That's not fair. No, I asked calmly. Then explain to me why you didn't ask me first. He opened his mouth, then closed it, because there was no answer. We sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, he spoke again. I was going to fix everything. I know. I swear, I know. He looked confused. You know? Yes, then why are you acting like this? I held his gaze. Because this time, I'm not going to fix it for you. His expression changed immediately. What does that mean? It means I'm not paying this loan. Mom, you don't have to. I'm also not lying to the bank. His eyes widened. You already talked to them. Yes. What did you tell them? His expression changed immediately. What does that mean? It means I'm not paying this loan? Mom, you don't have to. I'm also not lying to the bank. His eyes widened. You already talked to them. Yes. What did you tell them? The truth. He stood up abruptly. Are you serious right now? Yes. You're going to ruin me over this. I felt something inside me harden. You ruined yourself, Michael. No, I made a mistake. This wasn't a mistake. This was a decision. He started pacing. You don't understand what they'll do. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you said my name. I was trying to survive. This was a decision. He started pacing. You don't understand what they'll do. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you used my name. I was trying to survive, and I was supposed to be your shield. He stopped pacing and looked at me. What are you saying? I took a slow breath. I'm saying you're going to come with me? Where? To the bank. His face tightened. Why? So you can explain everything. No. The word came out fast, sharp. No, I'm not doing that. Yes, you are. They'll press charges. Maybe. They'll ruin my life. I looked at him steadily. You already started that process. He shook his head. Mom, please. Just let me fix it quietly. No, I'm not doing that. Yes, you are. They'll press charges. Maybe. They'll ruin my life. I looked at him steadily. You already started that process. He shook his head. Mom, please. Just let me fix it quietly. That's what you've been doing your whole life. This is different. No, I said softly. It's exactly the same. He stared at me, desperation slowly replacing confidence. I can pay it back. How ill figure it out. You said that before. This time, I mean it. You always mean it. Silence filled the room again. Then I said the one thing I knew would change everything. I'm giving you a choice. He looked at me carefully. What kind of choice? You come with me to the bank and you tell them the truth yourself. Or, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Or I tell them without you. His face went completely still. You wouldn't do that. I held his gaze. For the first time in your life, you might want to stop assuming what I would or wouldn't do. The silence that followed felt different. He wasn't arguing anymore. He was thinking, calculating, afraid. Good. Because for the first time, Michael Clark was finally facing consequences I wasn't going to take away. The drive to the bank was quiet. Too quiet. Michael sat in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead like he was watching something only he could see. I kept both hands on the steering wheel, 10 and 2. The way I used to teach nervous teenage drivers back when I volunteered at the school. Focus forward. Stay steady. Don't panic. But this, stay steady. Don't panic. But this wasn't a driving lesson. This was something much harder. About 5 minutes into the drive, Michael finally spoke. You don't have to do this. I didn't look at him. Yes, I do. No, you don't. Wasn't a driving lesson? This was something much harder. About 5 minutes into the drive, Michael finally spoke. You don't have to do this. I didn't look at him. Yes, I do. No, you don't. You've already made your point. I let out a small breath. This isn't about making a point. Then what is it about truth? He shook his head. This isn't going to fix anything. No, I said calmly. It's going to reveal everything. He turned toward me. And then what? I kept my eyes on the road. Then you deal with it. That's easy for you to say. I finally glanced at him. You think this is easy for me? He didn't answer, because he knew it wasn't. We drove the rest of the way in silence. When I pulled into the bank parking lot, Michael didn't move. He just sat there, frozen. I can't do this, he said quietly. Yes, you can. They're going to look at me like I'm a criminal. I turned off the engine. You made a criminal decision. That doesn't make me a criminal. I faced him fully now. It makes you responsible. He shook his head again. You don't understand what this will do to my life. I held his gaze. I think for the first time, I finally do. That landed. He looked away. I opened my door. Come on. He didn't move for a few seconds. Then slowly, he followed. We walked into the bank together, side by side, but not the way we used to. There was distance now. Not physical, something deeper. The receptionist recognized me immediately. Mrs. Clark. We walked into the bank together, side by side, but not the way we used to. There was distance now, not physical, something deeper. The receptionist recognized me immediately. Mrs. Clark. Her smile was polite but careful. Ms. Carter is expecting you. She glanced briefly at Michael, then back at me. I'll let her know you've arrived. We stood in the lobby, waiting. Michael shifted his weight from one foot to the other. I could feel his anxiety without even looking at him. Mom, not here. A moment later, Olivia Carter appeared. She greeted me with the same calm expression as before. Mrs. Clark. Then she looked at Michael. You must be Michael. He swallowed. Yes. She nodded slightly. Thank you for coming. Her tone wasn't harsh. It wasn't warm either. Professional. Measured. She gestured toward the hallway. Please follow me. We walked into a private conference room. Richard Bennett was already inside. He stood when we entered. Mrs. Clark! Mr. Clark! Michael flinched slightly at hearing his name in that tone. Formal. Official. We all sat down. Michael chose the chair farthest from the door, like he was already trying to avoid something. Olivia placed a folder on the table, the same one from yesterday. She didn't open it yet. Instead, she folded her hands. Before we begin, I want to make something clear. Her eyes moved between both of us. This conversation is being documented as part of an internal investigation. Michael shifted in his chair. If at any point either of you would like to stop, you have that right. Then she looked directly at him. But continuing allows us to resolve this situation accurately. Michael nodded slowly. Okay. Olivia glanced at me. Mrs. Clark, is there anything you'd like to say before we begin? I shook my head. No, that was intentional. This wasn't my moment to speak. It was his. Olivia turned to Michael. Then we'll start with you. He looked at her, clearly unsure where to begin. She helped him. Did you apply for a loan under Judith Clark's name? Silence. Michael looked at me. I didn't react. I didn't rescue him. I didn't speak. After a few seconds, Olivia repeated the question. Mike. He took a breath. Yes. The word sounded smaller than it had at my kitchen table. More real. More permanent. Olivia nodded once. Did Judith Clark give you permission to do so? No. Did you sign her name on the application documents? Michael hesitated. Then, yes. Did you use her personal identification documents to support the application? Yes. Richard wrote something down. The sound of his pen moving across paper filled the room. It was louder than it should have been. Like every word was being carved into something permanent. Olivia continued. How did you obtain these documents? Michael swallowed. They were in her house. Where? In a filing cabinet. Did you have permission to access that cabinet? A pause. Then no. Olivia leaned slightly forward. When did you access those documents? Michael closed his eyes briefly. About 8 months ago. During a visit? Yes. What was the purpose of that visit? He hesitated again. I told her I was fixing shelves. And were you? Not really. The honesty in that moment felt different. Less defensive. More exposed. Olivia nodded. Did anyone assist you in planning or executing this loan application? Michael's jaw tightened. For a second, I thought he might lie. Loan application. Michael's jaw tightened D. For a second, I thought he might lie. Then he exhaled. Yes. Who? Ethan Walker. Richard looked up for the first time. Olivia remained calm. What was Mr. Walker's role? He told me it would work. That's not a role, D. For a second, I thought he might lie. Then he exhaled. Yes. Who? Ethan Walker. Richard looked up for the first time. Olivia remained calm. What was Mr. Walker's role? He told me it would work. That's not a role. Michael shifted. He helped me understand what the bank would need. Did he handle any of the documents? No. Did he submit the application? No. Then what exactly did he do? Michael's voice dropped. He convinced me it wasn't a big deal. Silence. That answer hung in the air, because it sounded small, but it wasn't. Olivia let a few seconds pass. Then she asked the most important question. Michael, did you understand that what you were doing was fraudulent? Michael didn't answer right away. He looked down at his hands. Then finally, yes. That was it. That was the moment. Not the confession. Not the explanation. That word. Yes. He knew. And he did it anyway. I felt something inside me settle. Not break. Not shatter. Settle. Like a truth finally finding its place. Olivia closed the folder slowly. Thank you for your honesty. Her voice remained steady, but there was weight behind her words. This information will be used as part of our investigation. Michael nodded weakly. What happens now? Richard spoke this time.
Now we proceed with formal review and documentation.
Michael's voice trembled slightly.
And after that,
Richard met his eyes.
consequences will depend on multiple factors.
Michael nodded again. He didn't ask anything else, because he already understood. For the first time since this began, he wasn't trying to escape. He was listening. We stood up to leave. Michael moved slower than before, like something inside him had shifted. As we reached the door, Olivia spoke again.
Mrs. Clark.
I turned. You handled this with remarkable clarity. I gave a small nod. Thank you. But I didn't feel strong. I felt tired, very tired. Michael and I walked out of the bank together. Again, side by side. But this time, he wasn't hiding behind me. And for the first time in years, I wasn't standing in front of him either. The moment we stepped outside the bank, the air felt heavier, not quieter, not calmer, just heavier. Michael didn't say anything at first. Neither did I. We walked to the car slowly, like we both needed time to understand what had just happened. He got into the passenger seat without a word. I started the engine. Still nothing. For a few minutes, the only sound was the low hum of the car moving through traffic. Then finally, I didn't think it would feel like that. His voice was different now, quieter, not defensive, not angry, just drained. What did you think it would feel like? I asked. He stared out the window. I thought I could explain it better. You did explain it. He shook his head.
No, I said the words. That's not the same thing.
I didn't respond.
Because for once.
He was right. After a moment, he continued. I kept thinking if I just said it the right way, it wouldn't sound as bad. I glanced at him briefly, but it did.
Yeah.
He let out a small breath.
It sounded exactly as bad as it is.
That was the first honest sentence he had said without trying to soften it. We stopped at a red light. I turned to him. That's what truth does. It doesn't adjust itself to make us feel better. He nodded slowly. I get that now. The light turned green. We drove in silence again, but this time it felt different. Less tension, more weight. The kind that comes after something real has been said out loud. Halfway home, Michael spoke again. I kept waiting for you to jump in. I frowned slightly. What do you mean, in the meeting? He looked at me. I thought at some point you'd step in and explain things. Help me. Fix it. I kept my eyes on the road. I know. How? Because you've been waiting for that your whole life. He didn't argue, because again, he knew it was true. But you didn't, he said. No. Why? That question sat between us for a few seconds. Then I answered.
Because if I had, you would have walked out of that room thinking this wasn't your fault.
He swallowed.
I don't think that anymore.
I know. We pulled into my driveway. I turned off the engine. Neither of us moved. The house in front of us looked exactly the same as it had that morning, but everything inside it felt different now. Michael finally spoke. "What happens next?" I turned to him. "That depends on you." He frowned. "I already told them everything. That was the first step. And the next, you live with it." He looked down at his hands. "They're going to investigate. Yes, they could press charges. Yes, they could ruin my future." I held his gaze. "No, Michael, you did that." He flinched slightly. Not because I raised my voice, because I didn't. "I'm not saying that to hurt you," I continued. "I'm saying it because you need to understand something." He didn't speak. He just listened. "This doesn't end when you admit the truth. This is where it begins." He nodded slowly. "I don't know how to fix it." "That's because you've never had to before." That landed hard. I saw it in his eyes. "What if I can't?" He asked quietly. "Then you learn. How?" "One step at a time, and if I mess up again." "You probably will." He looked at me surprised. "You really think that?" "Yes. Then what's the point? The point is whether you take responsibility when you do." Silence. Then he asked something I wasn't expecting. "Do you hate me?" The question caught me off guard. I took a breath. "No." "Are you angry?" "Yes." "Are you disappointed?" "Yes." "Then why are you still here?" I looked at him carefully. "Because you're still my son." His eyes filled slightly. "But that doesn't mean I protect you from what you've done." He nodded. "I understand." I opened the car door. "Come inside." We walked into the house together. The same house where he had taken those documents. The same house where I had trusted him without question. Now it felt like neutral ground. Not safe. Not dangerous. Just the same house where he had taken those documents. The same house where I had trusted him without question. Now it felt like neutral ground. Not safe. Not dangerous. Just honest. We sat at the kitchen table again. The same place where everything had started. Michael looked around slowly. "I was standing right there," he said, pointing toward the hallway. "When I decided to do it." I followed his gaze. What changed in that moment? He thought for a second. "I stopped thinking about you." That answer didn't hurt. It clarified everything. "I started thinking about what I needed," he continued, "and how fast I could get it, and you convinced yourself it was temporary." "I stopped thinking about you." That answer didn't hurt. It clarified everything. "I started thinking about what I needed," he continued, "and how fast I could get it, and you convinced yourself it was temporary." "Yes, and harmless." He hesitated. "Yes." I nodded. "That's how most bad decisions start." He leaned back in his chair. "I don't want to be that person you already were." He closed his eyes briefly. "Then I don't want to stay that person." That was different. I studied him for a moment. Then I said quietly, "Then you don't get to take shortcuts anymore." He opened his eyes. No more quick fixes. No more borrowed solutions. No more one last chances. He nodded slowly. "Okay. And no more expecting me to clean up after you." His voice dropped. "Okay." The room went quiet again, but this silence felt different, less painful, more real. After a few minutes, he stood up. "I should go." I nodded.
All right.
He hesitated at the door, then turned back.
Mom.
Yes. Thank you. I frowned slightly. For what? For not lying for me. I didn't answer right away, because part of me still wished I didn't have to do any of this. But a bigger part knew. This was the first real thing I'd done for him in years. You're welcome, I said finally. He nodded once, then left. I stood in the doorway watching his car disappear down the street. For the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel like I had just lost my son. I felt like I had finally stopped losing him. The house felt quieter after Michael left. Not peaceful, not empty, just different. Like something had shifted that couldn't be undone. I stayed in the kitchen for a long time staring at the chair where he had been sitting. For years, that chair had been the place where he came to ask for help. Now it had become the place where he finally told the truth. That mattered, more than I expected, but it didn't erase what had happened. The next few days moved slowly, too slowly. Every phone call made my heart jump. Every unknown number made my chest tighten. I knew the investigation had started. I knew things were moving behind the scenes, but I had no control over any of it. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't try to take control. On the third day, Olivia called. Mrs. Clark, I wanted to update you. I sat down immediately. Yes, we've begun verifying the information Michael provided, and so far, his statement aligns with the documentation. I closed my eyes briefly. That wasn't relief. That was confirmation. There's something else, she added. What we've been trying to locate Ethan Walker. I straightened slightly. Have you found him? No. A pause. He's not answering calls, and his business office is closed. That doesn't surprise me. Olivia's tone sharpened slightly. It suggests he may have been aware of the situation before it escalated. You think he ran? It's a possibility. I felt a small surge of anger. Not the sharp kind, the quiet kind. The kind that settles in your chest and stays there. He always did that, I said. What do you mean? When things got difficult, he disappeared. Olivia didn't respond immediately. Then she asked, did Michael rely on him heavily? Yes. How long? Years. That answer felt important, because this wasn't something that had started recently. It had been building for a long time. After the call ended, I sat quietly for a few minutes. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I called Michael. He answered quickly. Hey. Hi. You okay? Yes. A pause. I just spoke to the bank. His voice tightened. What did they say? They're looking for Ethan. Silence. Then good luck with that. You don't think they'll find him? No. Why? Because he knew. That answer came too quickly. He's done this before, hasn't he? Michael didn't answer right away. Then finally, not like this. Like what has always pushed things, cut corners. That answer came too quickly. He's done this before, hasn't he? Michael didn't answer right away. Then finally, not like this. Like what? He's always pushed things, cut corners, taken risks. And you followed. Another pause. I trusted him. No, I said quietly. You trusted what he was telling you. That's not the same thing. Michael exhaled slowly. I didn't think it would go this far. It always goes this far, I replied. What do you mean? Bad decisions don't stay small. They grow, they spread, and eventually they land somewhere they can't be ignored. He didn't argue, because now he had seen that happen. I leaned back in my chair. Tell me something honestly. Okay, if Ethan hadn't suggested this, would you have done it anyway? The silence that followed was longer this time, much longer. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. I don't know. That answer mattered, because it wasn't a denial. It was uncertainty. And uncertainty meant something had already been broken before Ethan entered the picture. You had chances to stop, I said. I know. You had time to think. I know. You knew it was wrong. Yes, so don't give him more responsibility than he deserves. Michael's voice shifted slightly. You think this is all on me? I know it is. Silence again. Then he said something that surprised me. I kept telling myself it wasn't real. What wasn't real? The consequences. I frowned slightly. I thought if I could fix it fast enough, it wouldn't matter how I got there. That's how you've always thought. Yeah. There was no defensiveness in his voice, just acknowledgement. I think that's why I never stopped, he continued, because I didn't believe I'd actually have to face it. And now I do. We sat in silence on the phone. Then he said, Ethan told me something once. What? That the system only works if you're too afraid to challenge it. I shook my head. And you believed him? I wanted to. Why? Because it made what I was doing feel smaller. I let that sit for a moment. Then I said quietly, people like Ethan don't make things smaller, Michael. They make them easier to justify. That hit him. I know, he said. But I still chose it. Yes. And now he's gone. Yes. And I'm the one sitting here dealing with it. Yes. Another silence. Then he said something I didn't expect. I don't think I'm angry at him. No. I think I'm angry at myself for listening. That was new. That was real. Because it wasn't about blame anymore. It was about ownership. After we hung up, I felt something shift again. Not relief, not forgiveness, but clarity. Ethan Walker wasn't the story. He was part of it, but not the center. The truth was harder than that. Michael hadn't been tricked. He had been persuaded, and he had agreed. That difference mattered. A few days later, Lauren stopped by unexpectedly. She stood in my doorway, looking more tired than I'd ever seen her. Can I come in? Of course. We sat in the living room. She didn't waste time. Sophie asked me something yesterday. I felt my chest tighten. What? She asked why her dad looks like he's in trouble all the time. I closed my eyes briefly. What did you tell her? That adults make mistakes, and that good people try to fix them. I nodded slowly. That was the right answer. Lauren studied me for a moment. Is he trying? Yes. She looked relieved, but only slightly. That's something, she said. It is. She hesitated, then asked the question she'd been holding back. Do you think he's going to be okay? I thought about that. Really thought about it. Then I answered honestly. I think for the first time, he might have a chance to be. Lauren nodded slowly, because she understood what I meant. Not successful, not comfortable, not protected. Better. And sometimes, that matters more. The letter arrived on a Thursday morning. Plain envelope, no return address I recognized, just my name printed neatly across the front. Judith Clark. I stood at the kitchen counter for a moment staring at it. Somehow I already knew it wasn't good news. I opened it slowly. Inside was a formal notice from the bank. Subject loan investigation preliminary findings. My hands felt colder as I read. The letter confirmed what we already knew. The loan had been fraudulently obtained using my identity. Michael's statement had been verified, but that wasn't the part that made my chest tighten. It was the next section. Given the cooperation of all involved parties and the ongoing internal review, the matter has been escalated for legal consultation. Legal consultation? That meant lawyers. That meant consequences were no longer theoretical. They were real. I sat down and read the final paragraph again. The institution reserves the right to pursue legal action depending on the outcome of the full investigation. I folded the letter carefully, then unfolded it again, as if reading it twice might change something. It didn't. I picked up my phone and called Michael. He answered almost immediately. "Hey, I got a letter." Silence. Then, "From the bank." "Yes." Another pause. "What does it say?" "They've moved it to legal review." The silence that followed was heavier than anything we'd shared before, because now there was nothing left to interpret. "What does that mean?" he asked quietly. "It means this is serious." "I know it's serious." "No," I said gently. "It means it's beyond us now." That landed. I could hear it in the way he exhaled. "So what happens, I don't know yet." "That's not true," he said. His voice had a sharp edge now. "You do know." "I know what could happen," I replied. "That's not the same as what will happen." Another silence. Then, "Are you going to help me?" The question caught me off guard. Not because of what he asked, but because of how he asked it. Like a child again. Like nothing had changed. "I already did," I said calmly. "How I told you the truth. That's not helping." "It is." "No helping would be fixing this." I closed my eyes briefly. There it is. "What?" "That thinking." He didn't respond. "Michael, this isn't something I can fix. You could talk to them." "I did. You could tell them you forgive me. That doesn't change what happened. You could say you don't want to press charges." "I'm not the only one involved." He hesitated. "But you're the one who was hurt." "Yes, and you don't want to see me go to jail." I opened my eyes. "No, I don't." "Then do something." "I am doing something." "What?" "Not lying." He let out a frustrated breath. "This is insane." "No," I said quietly. "This is real." Another silence. Then he said something that surprised me. "I met with a lawyer." I straightened slightly. "You did?" "Yes." "When not lying." He let out a frustrated breath. "This is insane." "No," I said quietly. "This is real." Another silence. Then he said something that surprised me. "I met with a lawyer." I straightened slightly. "You did?" "Yes." "When yesterday? What did they say?" "They said I could fight it, how they said the bank should have verified more carefully." I felt my stomach drop. "And you believe that I don't know? You want to." "Of course I do." I leaned forward slightly. "Michael, listen to me. I am. If you start trying to shift blame, you're going to make this worse. They're not innocent either." "That doesn't make you innocent." Silence. "I just don't want to lose everything he said. You already did." The words came out softer than I expected, but they still hit. "What do you mean, I mean you lost trust? You lost credibility. You lost the ability to walk into a room and pretend this didn't happen? That matters more than anything else." He didn't argue, because somewhere inside he knew it was true. "I don't know what to do," he said. "Then stop trying to avoid it." "That's easy for you to say?" No, it's not. You're not the one facing charges. No, I'm the one facing the truth. That stopped him, because for the first time, he understood what this had cost me too. Later that afternoon, there was another knock at the door. This time, I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened it, I froze. A man stood there, mid-40s, well-dressed, confident, too confident. Mrs. Clark.
Yes.
He smiled slightly.
My name is Daniel Reeves. I represent Ethan Walker.
My chest tightened immediately.
Ethan? Yes. He asked me to speak with you. I didn't invite him in. What does he want to resolve this situation? I almost laughed. Resolve it? Yes. How Hayes prepared to offer a financial settlement.
I stared at him.
A settlement in exchange for your cooperation.
There it was. The twist I hadn't expected.
What kind of cooperation?
He handed me a folder.
Review this. I didn't take it right away. Say it.
He held my gaze.
He would like you to clarify that you were aware of the loan.
I felt something cold settle in my chest.
That's a lie.
It's a statement that would simplify the situation.
No, I said firmly. It's a lie.
He didn't react, just continued calmly.
In return, Mr. Walker is willing to cover the full loan amount.
That's not his money to fix.
It would prevent further legal action.
For him. For everyone. I stepped back slightly.
So this is what he does. Excuse me. He disappears when things go wrong, then sends someone else to clean it up.
Daniel didn't respond, because he didn't need to. We both knew it was true. I'm not doing this, I said. I understand your hesitation.
It's not hesitation. It's refusal.
He nodded slowly.
Then I'm obligated to inform you that this process may become more difficult.
I smiled faintly.
It already is.
He handed me his card.
If you change your mind.
I didn't take it.
I won't.
He left without another word. I closed the door and leaned against it. For a long moment, I just stood there. Then I walked back into the kitchen and sat down. Because now I understood something clearly. This wasn't just about Michael anymore. This wasn't just about a bad decision. This was bigger. Ethan wasn't gone. He was still playing the game, still trying to control the outcome, still trying to avoid consequences. But this time, I wasn't part of his solution. I was the problem he couldn't fix. I didn't call Michael after Daniel Reeves left. Not right away. For the first time since all of this began, I needed to sit with something before reacting to it. Because what had just happened wasn't just pressure. It was strategy. Ethan wasn't running. He was repositioning. I sat at the kitchen table again, staring at the empty space where Daniel had stood just minutes earlier. A settlement, a lie, a clean escape for him, and a permanent stain for me. I picked up my phone. This time I didn't call Michael. I called Olivia. She answered quickly. Mrs. Clark, I need to report something. Her tone shifted immediately. What happened? I explained everything. The visit, the offer, the lie they wanted me to confirm. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a brief pause. Then she said, That changes things. How? It confirms Mr. Walker is actively attempting to influence the outcome. And that makes this more serious. I let out a slow breath. I assumed it already was. It was, she said. But now we're looking at potential obstruction. That word landed differently. Obstruction. This wasn't just about what had happened anymore. It was about what he was still trying to do. What should I do if he contacts me again? I asked. Do not engage. And if someone else shows up, refer them to us. Nothing else. Nothing else. I nodded slowly. Okay. Before hanging up, Olivia added something that stayed with me. You did the right thing by refusing. I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, it didn't feel like a choice. It felt like the only thing I could live with. After the call, I finally dialed Michael. This time, he didn't answer. I tried again. Nothing. A third time. Voicemail. Michael, call me. I hung up. Something felt off. Not wrong. Just different. About an hour later, my phone rang. It was him. Hey. His voice sounded tense. You've been calling? Yes. I was in a meeting. With who? A pause. Ethan. My stomach tightened immediately. You found him. He found me. Where are you? Does it matter? Yes, it does. Silence. Then he said quietly, I needed to talk to him. Why? Because I needed to understand what he's planning. And what is he planning? Michael exhaled slowly. He's trying to make this go away. I know. Yes, it does. Silence. Then he said quietly, I needed to talk to him. Why? Because I needed to understand what he's planning. And what is he planning? Michael exhaled slowly. He's trying to make this go away. I know. You do? He sent a lawyer to my house. Silence. Then, what? He offered a settlement. Another silence. He said he'd cover the loan if I said I knew about it. Michael didn't respond right away. Then, and you said no? Yes. A long pause. Then his voice changed. Lower. Heavier. I didn't. The words hit like something physical. What I didn't say no. I stood up slowly. What did you do? I told him I'd think about it. My chest tightened. Why would you do that? Because it would fix everything. No, I said sharply. It would hide everything. It would keep me out of jail. It would put me in a lie. Mom? No. My voice didn't raise, but it didn't need to. You think this ends if you lie your way out of it? It could. No, Michael. It doesn't end. It follows you. It sits in every decision, follows you. It sits in every decision you make after that. It becomes who you are. He didn't answer. Because part of him knew that was true. He said you'd come around, Michael added quietly. That made me stop. What you make after that, it becomes who you are. He didn't answer, because part of him knew that was true. He said you'd come around? Michael added quietly. That made me stop. What he said, eventually you'd realize this is the best option. I felt something cold move through me. Of course he did. Why? Because that's how he survives, by convincing people that the easiest way out is the smartest one. Michael let out a breath. He said the bank just wants closure. The bank wants truth. No, he said. They want resolution. I shook my head. You still don't get it. Then explain it to me. Resolution without truth isn't resolution. It's delay. For what? For the next problem. Silence. Then he said something that worried me. I don't think I can handle what's coming. I closed my eyes briefly. Yes, you can. No, I can't. Yes, you can. You don't know that. I do. How? Because you don't have another choice that landed. Hard. I'm scared, he admitted. I know. I don't want to lose everything. I know. I don't want Sophie to see me like this. That one hurt. More than anything else.
Then show her something different, I said quietly. Oh, by telling the truth. That's not going to protect her. No, I said softly. But it might teach her something. Silence. Then I asked the question that mattered most. Are you going to take his deal? A long pause. I don't know. I took a deep breath. Then listen to me carefully. I'm listening. If you lie, you lose me. The silence that followed was absolute. Not tense, not loud, just still. You wouldn't do that, he said finally. I didn't hesitate. I already did once. That was the truth. I had already stopped protecting him. This was just the next step. I'm not choosing between you and the truth. I continued. I'm choosing the truth. And if that means losing you, then that's a consequence of your decision. His breathing changed. Slower, heavier. You're serious, yes. Another long pause. Then finally. Okay, what I want, take the deal. I didn't relax. Not yet. Why? Because. He hesitated, then said something I hadn't expected. Because I don't want Sophie to grow up thinking this is how you fix things. That was it. That was the moment. Not perfect. Not complete. But real. Then walk away from him, I said. I will. Completely. I will. Don't meet him again. I won't. Don't answer his calls. I won't. Let the process happen. A small pause. Then, okay. We hung up. I sat back down slowly. For the first time since this began, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. Not relief. Not yet. But something close, because Michael had finally made a choice. That wasn't about escaping consequences. It was about facing them, and that changed everything. The official notice came 2 weeks later. This one wasn't a letter. It was delivered in person. A man in a dark suit stood at my door holding a folder and a calm, unreadable expression. Mrs. Clark. Yes, I'm here on behalf of the district attorney's office. That was the moment everything shifted from possibility to reality. He handed me the documents. I'll need you to review and acknowledge receipt. My hands were steady as I took them, but inside, something tightened. Not fear, not panic, something heavier, understanding. This is regarding the fraudulent loan case. Yes, ma'am. I signed where he pointed. Will there be a court date? I asked. There will be a preliminary hearing scheduled, and my role. You may be called to testify. I nodded slowly. Thank you. He gave a brief, professional nod, then left. I closed the door and stood there for a long moment. Then I walked back to the kitchen and sat down. Again. It felt like everything important in my life had happened at that table lately. I opened the folder. Michael Clark, charges pending review, fraud, identity misuse, financial deception. The words were clinical, cold, but they carried weight, real weight. I picked up my phone. I didn't hesitate this time. I called Michael. He answered on the first ring. Hey, they're moving forward. Silence. Then, with charges. Yes. Another silence. Longer. He didn't ask for details. He didn't argue. He didn't panic. He just absorbed it. Okay, he said finally. Just one word. But it was different from the last time he said it. This wasn't resignation. This was acceptance. I'm sorry, he added quietly. I closed my eyes for a moment. I know. I mean it this time. I know. That mattered because I could hear it, not in his words, in his tone. I got a notice too, he said. This morning, and they want me to appear next week. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. They want me there too. Silence. Are you going to testify? He asked. Yes. Another pause. I understand. That was new. No resistance, no pleading, just understanding. I'm not doing it against you, I said gently. I know. I'm doing it for the truth. I know, and for you. That caught him off guard. For me, no pleading, just understanding. I'm not doing it against you, I said gently. I know. I'm doing it for the truth. I know. And for you. That caught him off guard. For me? Yes. How is this for me? I took a breath. Because this is the first time in your life you're actually facing something honestly. That matters. He didn't respond right away. Then I'm scared. I know, but I'm not running. That was the difference. Before fear made him run. Now fear was making him stay. I'm proud of you for that, I said. The silence that followed was different, softer, more human. I don't deserve that, he said. Maybe not yet. But you're moving in that direction. That was the truth. Later that evening, Lauren called. Michael told me. Yes. Is it bad? It's serious. She exhaled slowly. Sophie heard us talking. My chest tightened. What did you say? That her dad is going to have to go to court and that sometimes adults have to fix big mistakes. I nodded. That's honest. She asked if he's a bad person. That question sat heavy between us. What did you tell her? I asked. I said no, and that sometimes adults have to fix big mistakes. I nodded. That's honest. She asked if he's a bad person. That question sat heavy between us. What did you tell her? I asked. I said no. I closed my eyes briefly. Good, but I also said he made a bad choice. That's important. Lauren's voice softened. I don't know how to explain this to her. You don't have to explain everything, just the parts that matter. Like what? Like the fact that telling the truth matters, even when it's hard. She was quiet for a moment. Then, do you really believe that, yes, even now, especially now? After we hung up, I sat alone in the living room. The house felt still, but not empty, just waiting. Waiting for the next step, the next moment, the next truth. The hearing came faster than I expected. Michael met me outside the courthouse. He looked different, not just tired, grounded, like something inside him had settled. Hey, he said. Hi. We stood there for a moment. Not awkward, just aware. You ready? He asked. No. He gave a small nod. Me neither. Then he surprised me. Thank you for being here. I looked at him. I wasn't sure you would come. I told you I would. I know, but this is different. He nodded slowly. Yes, it is. We walked inside together, not as mother and son trying to protect each other, but as two people walking into the consequences of a shared reality. Inside the courtroom, everything felt structured, controlled, predictable, which somehow made it more intimidating. Michael sat beside his lawyer. I sat a few rows back, not beside him, not in front of him, just present. The proceedings began. Names, dates, statements.
Facts. Everything reduced to clear, undeniable points. When Michael was called to speak, he stood slowly. I watched him carefully. This was the moment that mattered. Not the bank, not the phone calls. This. The truth in front of everyone. Did you knowingly apply for a loan using your mother's identity? A pause. Then, yes. No hesitation, no excuse, just truth. Did you understand this was illegal? Yes. Did anyone force you to do this? Michael glanced briefly in my direction, then back. No. Did anyone influence your decision? Another pause. Then, yes. Who? Ethan Walker. Did he instruct you to commit fraud? Michael swallowed. No. Then what was his role? He made it seem like it wasn't a big deal. And you believed him? Yes. Why? Michael hesitated, then said something that changed everything. Because I wanted to. The room went quiet. That answer wasn't defensive. It wasn't blaming. It was honest. And it mattered, because for the first time, Michael wasn't just telling the truth. He was owning it. The courtroom didn't feel the same after Michael spoke. It wasn't quieter. It wasn't calmer. But something had shifted. Before, the air had been filled with tension. Now it was filled with clarity. And clarity is harder to hide from. I watched as the prosecutor nodded slightly, then shuffled a few papers. Your Honor, based on the defendant's statement and the supporting documentation, we would like to proceed with further review of potential charges. The judge looked down, expression neutral. Understood. Then his gaze moved to Michael. Mr. Clark, you are acknowledging full responsibility for your actions. Michael stood straight. Yes, Your Honor. No hesitation. No wavering. That mattered. Very well, the judge said. There will be a formal hearing scheduled to determine the extent of charges and possible sentencing. Sentencing. That word landed heavier than anything else so far, because it wasn't about what happened. It was about what comes next. Michael nodded. Yes, Your Honor. The judge turned slightly. Until that time, you are required to remain available and comply with all legal proceedings. I will. The hearing ended shortly after that. No dramatic moment, no sudden twist, just a steady movement forward, which somehow felt more intense than anything else. Outside the courtroom, Michael walked beside me again. But this time, there was no silence. I didn't lie, he said. I know. I wanted to. I looked at him, but you didn't. He nodded slowly. I kept hearing your voice in my head. What was it saying? That if I lied, I'd lose you. I didn't respond right away, because part of me wondered if that had been too harsh. But another part knew it had been necessary. I wasn't trying to scare you, I said finally. I know. I was trying to make you choose. I know. We stepped outside into the sunlight. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Michael said something unexpected. I saw Ethan. My stomach tightened immediately. Where in the hallway? What, he didn't come into the courtroom? Of course he didn't. Then Michael said something unexpected. I saw Ethan. My stomach tightened immediately. Where in the hallway? What, he didn't come into the courtroom? Of course he didn't. Michael let out a breath. He was just standing there, watching. That sounded exactly like him. And he tried to talk to me. My chest tightened. What did he say? He told me I was making a mistake. I almost smiled. That's predictable. Michael shook his head. It didn't feel predictable. It felt convincing. That didn't surprise me. What did you do? I walked away. I studied him carefully. And
And he said something before I left. What? It didn't feel predictable. It felt convincing. That didn't surprise me. What did you do? I walked away. I studied him carefully. And he said something before I left. What Michael hesitated, then repeated it. He said, "You think this ends with honesty? It doesn't. It ends with consequences." I let that sit for a moment. Then I said quietly, "He's right." Michael looked at me confused. What is right about that part? This doesn't end with honesty. It begins with it, but it still leads to consequences. Michael exhaled slowly. So what's the point? The point is what kind of person you are when those consequences arrive. That landed. He didn't argue. He didn't question it. Because now, he was starting to understand. A few days later, I was called in for my statement. The same building, the same quiet rooms, the same controlled environment. But this time, I was the one sitting across the table. The prosecutor, a woman in her early 40s, looked at me calmly. "Mrs. Clark, thank you for coming." "Of course. We just need to confirm a few details." I nodded. "Did you authorize your son to use your identity for a loan application?" "No." "Did you have any prior knowledge of the loan?" "No." "Did you benefit in any way from the loan?" "No." She nodded, writing notes. "Have you been approached by anyone regarding this case?" "Yes." She looked up. "Who?" "A lawyer representing Ethan Walker." "And what was the nature of that contact?" I took a breath. "He offered a financial settlement in exchange for a false statement." Her expression didn't change, but I could see the shift. "And how did you respond?" I refused. She nodded once. "Thank you." A pause. Then she asked something more personal. "Mrs. Clark, do you wish to pursue charges against your son?" The question felt heavier than anything else, not because I didn't know the answer, but because of what it meant. "I want the truth to be recognized," I said. "That's not exactly what I asked. I know." I held her gaze. "I'm not here to punish my son. I'm here to make sure what happened is not ignored." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "That's clear." After the meeting, I stepped outside, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something unexpected. Not relief, not happiness, but steadiness. Like the ground beneath me wasn't shifting anymore. Later that evening, Michael came by. He didn't call first. He just showed up. I opened the door and looked at him. "You okay?" I asked. "No." "Come in." We sat in the living room this time, not the kitchen. A small change, but it felt important. "I keep thinking about what Ethan said," he admitted. "That this ends with consequences. And I think he's right." "He is." Michael looked at me. "So how do you live with that?" I leaned back slightly. "You don't avoid it. You don't minimize it. You don't pretend it's unfair. Then what do? You accept it. And then, so how do you live with that?" I leaned back slightly. "You don't avoid it. You don't minimize it. You don't pretend it's unfair. Then what do? You accept it. And then, you build something honest on top of it." He frowned slightly. "That sounds slow." "It is. That sounds hard." "It is." He let out a small breath. "I don't know if I can do that." I looked at him carefully. "You already are." He shook his head. "No, I'm just dealing with this. That's where it starts." He sat quietly for a moment, then said something that surprised me. "I used to think consequences were the worst part, and now Now I think avoiding them was worse. That was it. That was the shift. The real one. Because for the first time, he wasn't just reacting to the situation. He was understanding it. And that changes everything. The sentencing hearing was scheduled faster than I expected. 3 weeks. That was all it took for everything to move from pending to decided. 3 weeks for a life to change direction. 3 weeks for the truth to settle into something permanent. Michael called me the night before. I can't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone pressed to my ear. I didn't expect you to. I keep thinking, what if this is it? What do you mean? What if tomorrow decides everything? I took a slow breath. It doesn't decide everything. It decides a lot.
Yes, but not everything.
Silence.
I wish I could go back, he said quietly.
I know. I'd do it differently. I know. I'd stop myself. I know. There was a pause. Then I said something he needed to hear. But you didn't. I know. And now you don't get to go back. I know. That word again. I know. But this time, it didn't sound like avoidance. It sounded like acceptance. I'll be there tomorrow, I said. I know. And no matter what happens, you walk through it. He didn't respond right away. Then, okay. The next morning, the courthouse felt colder. Not physically, emotionally, like everything inside those walls had already made up its mind. Michael was already there when I arrived, standing outside, hands in his pockets, looking at the ground. He looked up when he saw me. Hey, hi. We stood there for a moment. No small talk, no pretending, just presence. I talked to Lauren, he said, and she's bringing Sophie later. My chest tightened slightly. Are you sure that's a good idea? She wants to be there. She's a child, Michael. I know, but she said something. What? She said she wants to see me be honest. That hit deeper than anything else. Because children don't always understand the details, but they understand truth. We walked inside together. This time, it felt heavier, more final. The courtroom was already partially filled. Lawyers, clerks, observers, people who didn't know us, but were about to witness one of the most important moments of our lives. Michael sat at the front again, his lawyer beside him. I sat behind, same distance, same space. But everything felt different. The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat. The room went still. Mr. Clark, the judge began, based on the evidence presented and your own admission. He paused briefly. This court recognizes your full responsibility in the matter of fraudulent financial activity. Michael didn't move, didn't speak, just listened. However, the judge continued, this court also considers your cooperation, your willingness to admit fault, and your lack of prior criminal history. That mattered. I could feel it. The shift, subtle, but real. This is not a case of ignorance, the judge said. It is a case of conscious decision. Another pause. But it is also a case where the defendant has demonstrated accountability. I saw Michael swallow, just slightly. As such, the room felt like it held its breath. This court sentences you to a period of probation, financial restitution, and mandatory financial ethics counseling. Michael's head lifted slightly, not in relief, in surprise. You are required to repay the full amount of the loan. Yes, Your Honor, he said quietly. You are also required to complete a structured program addressing financial responsibility and ethical decision-making. Yes, Your Honor. and you will remain under supervised probation for a period of 2 years. The words settled into the room. Heavy, but not devastating. Not prison, not destruction. Consequences. Real ones, but survivable ones. Failure to comply with any of these conditions will result in immediate escalation of penalties. I understand. The judge looked at him one last time. Mr. Clark, this is your opportunity to prove that your actions today reflect who you intend to be going forward. Michael nodded. Yes, Your Honor. The gavel struck, and just like that, it was done. Outside the courtroom, the air felt different again, lighter, but not easy, never easy. Michael walked beside me slowly. I thought it would feel better. What does it feel like? Like I still have work to do. I nodded. That's exactly what it is. He let out a breath. I'm not free? No, but I'm not finished either. No, that's something. It is. Lauren arrived shortly after holding Sophie's hand. Sophie ran toward Michael immediately. Dad. He knelt down and hugged her tightly. I'm here, he said softly. I saw you, she said. You told the truth. Michael pulled back slightly, looking at her. Yes. That's good, she said simply. He smiled faintly. Yes, it is. Lauren looked at me, a silent question in her eyes. I nodded once. It's okay. Later that afternoon, Michael came by the house, alone. We sat in the kitchen again, back where everything had started. I have to repay everything, he said. Yes. I have to report every month. Yes. I have to go to counseling. Yes. He looked at me. I have to rebuild everything. I held his gaze. Yes. He nodded slowly. I think I want to. That mattered more than anything else. Not that he had to, but that he wanted to. I don't expect you to trust me again, he added. Not yet. That's fair. I don't expect things to go back to normal. They won't. He paused. I want to become someone you can trust again. I didn't answer right away. Because trust isn't something you promise. It's something you prove. One step at a time, I said. He nodded. One step at a time, and for the first time since all of this began, that didn't sound like a burden. It sounded like a path. The weeks after the sentencing were quieter than I expected. Not peaceful, not resolved, just quieter. For the first time in a long time, there were no urgent phone calls, no legal notices, no sudden decisions. Just time. And time has a way of revealing things you couldn't see before. Michael started coming by less often. At first, I noticed it immediately. The empty Wednesdays, the quiet weekends, the absence of his car in the driveway. Old habits made me reach for the phone more than once, but I stopped myself. Because this time, space wasn't distance. It was responsibility. About a month later, he showed up unexpectedly. But this time, something felt different. He wasn't rushed. He wasn't anxious. He wasn't asking for anything. He just stood there holding a small envelope. Hey. Hi. I stepped aside. Come in. We didn't go to the kitchen right away. Instead, we sat in the living room again. That had become our new space. Less transactional, more honest. I wanted to show you something, he said. He handed me the envelope. Inside was a receipt, a payment confirmation. I looked closer. Loan repayment, first installment. I felt something shift quietly inside me. You started? I said. Yes. How does it feel? He thought about it. Real. I nodded. That's a good word for it. I had to sell some things, he added. What kind of things? My car. That must have been hard. It was necessary. That mattered. Because before Michael would have said it was unfair. Now he said it was necessary. That was growth. I also got a job, he continued. I looked up. Doing what? Warehouse logistics. That's different. Yeah, it's not what I planned. It doesn't have to be. He nodded slowly. It's honest. That word again, honest. It kept showing up. In small ways. In quiet moments. In choices that didn't look impressive but mattered more than anything else. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he said, I started the counseling, and I didn't think I needed it. But I did? I smiled faintly. That's usually how it works. He looked down at his hands. They asked me why I kept making the same decisions. And what did you say? That I thought I could fix things faster than they broke. I nodded. That sounds like you? He gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. Yeah. But they said something else. What? They said I didn't actually believe in consequences. I leaned back slightly. That's accurate. I know. And now I see them everywhere. I didn't respond. Because that realization changes everything. A few days later, I had Sophie over for the afternoon. Just like before. Cookies, books, quiet conversations. Some things hadn't changed, and that mattered. We sat on the porch swing together. The same one we'd used for years. She looked at me thoughtfully. Grandma? Yes, is my dad okay? I took a moment before answering. Yes, he's working on things. We sat on the porch swing together. The same one we'd used for years. She looked at me thoughtfully. Grandma? Yes. Is my dad okay? I took a moment before answering. Yes, he's working on things. Like what? Like being honest. She nodded slowly. That's good. Yes, it is. She swung her legs gently. Mom says people make mistakes. They do. But she says what matters is what they do after. I smiled. Your mom is very wise. Sophie looked at me. Do you think Dad is fixing his mistake? I looked out at the yard for a moment, then back at her. I think he's trying, and that's enough. I considered that carefully. It's the beginning. She seemed satisfied with that. And honestly, so was I. Later that week, I received another call from Olivia. Mrs. Clark, I wanted to update you. Yes. The loan has been officially cleared from your responsibility. I closed my eyes briefly. Thank you. Your cooperation made that possible. No, I said quietly. The truth made it possible. She paused. Then, yes, it did. Before hanging up, she added, I see cases like this often, and most of them don't end this way. What do you mean, most people choose the easier path? I thought about that, about Ethan, about the offer, about how close everything had come to being hidden instead of resolved. I understand, I said. After the call, I sat in the same chair I had sat in so many times before. But this time, it felt different. Not heavy, not tense, just settled. A few weeks later, Michael came by again. This time, he didn't bring anything. No envelope, no updates, just himself. We sat together in silence for a while. Then he said, I don't expect things to go back to how they were. They won't. I know. He looked at me. But I think maybe they can become something else.
I studied him carefully. What do you mean? Something honest. That word again? Always that word.
I'd like that, I said.
He nodded. Me too.
We didn't say much after that,
Because sometimes you don't need a long conversation. Sometimes in the quiet moments say everything. And for the first time in a long time, the silence between us didn't feel like something broken. It felt like something rebuilding, slowly, carefully, but truly. Time didn't fix everything, but it revealed everything. 6 months passed. Not quickly, not slowly, just steadily. And in that time, I watched Michael do something I had never truly seen him do before. He stayed consistent. Not dramatic, not impressive. Consistent. He made his payments. Every month. On time. No excuses, no delays. He went to counseling. Even on days he didn't want to. Especially on days he didn't want to. He worked. Hard. Long hours. Quietly. No complaints. No shortcuts. And slowly, very slowly, something began to change. Not just in him, in me. Trust didn't come back all at once. It didn't return with one conversation, or one apology, or one good decision. It came back in pieces, small ones, barely noticeable at first, but real. One afternoon, he showed up with Sophie. She ran ahead of him, smiling. "Grandma?" I knelt down and hugged her. "Hi, sweetheart." Michael stood a few steps behind her, not rushing forward, not inserting himself, just waiting. That was new. "Can we bake cookies?" Sophie asked. "Of course." She ran into the kitchen. I stood up slowly and looked at Michael. "You look tired." "I am, but you came anyway." "Of course." I studied him for a moment. Why he didn't hesitate? Because this matters. That answer? It stayed with me. We spent the afternoon baking, laughing, simple things, the kind of things that used to feel normal. Now they felt earned. At one point, Sophie looked at her father. "Dad, you don't work in an office anymore?" Michael smiled slightly. "No. Do you miss it?" He thought about it, then shook his head. "Not really. Why?" "Because I like who I am more now." I glanced at him. That wasn't something the old Michael would have said. Sophie nodded as if that made perfect sense. "Good," she said, "because children understand things adults complicate." Later that evening, after Sophie and Lauren left, Michael stayed behind. We sat at the kitchen table again. Full circle. "I had a meeting today," he said. "With who, my probation officer?" And she said, "I'm doing well. That's good." We sat at the kitchen table again. Full circle. "I had a meeting today," he said. "With who, my probation officer?" And she said, "I'm doing well. That's good." She also said something else. "What?" She said most people don't change. I leaned back slightly. "And what did you say I said I didn't think I would either?" I smiled faintly. "But you are. I'm trying." That word again. Trying. It used to sound like an excuse. Now it sounded like effort. Real effort. "I wanted to tell you something," he added. "What?" "I paid off another portion of the loan today." I nodded. "That's good. I'm getting closer." "I know." He hesitated, then asked something carefully. "Do you trust me?" The question hung in the air. Heavy. Important. I didn't rush the answer, because this time it deserved honesty. "I trust what you're doing," I said. He absorbed that. And me, I held his gaze. I'm learning to. He nodded slowly. That's fair. There was no disappointment in his voice, no frustration, just understanding. That mattered, because trust isn't something you demand, it's something you rebuild, piece by piece, day by day. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. You already have it. He looked up surprised. I do. Yes. When you stopped lying. He sat quietly for a moment. I didn't know that. Most people don't. I paused. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. I know, and it doesn't restore trust instantly. I know. But it gives you a chance. He nodded. I won't waste it. I know. And for the first time, I truly believe that. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. I received a letter. Not from the bank, not from a lawyer, from Ethan Walker. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a short message. No apology, no explanation, just a few lines. I hope you understand that people like your son don't survive situations like this without help. You made it harder than it needed to be. I read it twice, then folded it and set it aside, because for the first time, his words didn't carry weight. They didn't influence anything. They didn't change anything, because the truth had already done its work. Later that evening, Michael came by again. I handed him the letter. He read it, then looked up at me. I'm sorry. For what? For ever listening to him. I nodded. I know. He hesitated, then said something quietly. I don't need his version of survival anymore. I looked at him carefully. Good. Because I think I finally understand yours. That was it. That was the moment everything settled. Not perfectly, not completely, but honestly. And sometimes that's enough. Because life doesn't always give you clean endings. It gives you choices and consequences and chances. And what you do with those, that's what defines you. Word. Count 1, 136. End of part 15. Life lesson and message. There's a moment in every difficult situation where the easiest path presents itself. It looks simple. It looks clean. It looks like a way out. But most of the time, it's just a way around the truth. And going around the truth never leads you forward. It only delays where you're going. What this story reminds us is something many people learn too late. Consequences are not the enemy. Avoiding them is. Because when you face consequences honestly, something powerful happens. You stop pretending. You stop hiding. You stop becoming someone you don't recognize. And instead, you start rebuilding. Slowly. Painfully, but truthfully. Michael didn't become a better person because he avoided punishment. He became better because he accepted responsibility. Because he told the truth when it mattered most. Because he chose honesty over comfort. And Judith, she didn't lose her son. She stopped protecting his mistakes. And in doing that, she gave him the chance to become someone worthy of being trusted again. Sometimes love doesn't look like protection. Sometimes it looks like truth. Even when that truth hurts. Even when it costs something. So if you're facing a situation where you're tempted to take the easy way out, ask yourself, are you solving the problem or just postponing it? Because the truth will always wait. And when it comes back stronger. If this story made you think or reminded you of something in your own life, take a moment to share your thoughts. Where are you watching from today? What would you have done in Judith's position? Don't forget to subscribe, and join this community where we share real stories, real emotions, and real lessons. Because sometimes, the hardest truths lead to the strongest endings. If this story touched you in any way, I'd really love to hear from you. What would you have done if you were in Judith's position? Would you have protected your child or chosen the truth like she did? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your perspective might help someone else going through something similar. And before you go, let me know where you are watching from and what time it is where you are right now. It's always amazing to see how far these stories reach. If you believe in second chances and accountability and in the power of truth, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories like this. Because sometimes the stories that hurt the most are the ones that teach us the most.